Faculty, staff, I think I see somebody from all these groups, students, guests, sisters. We are just glad to have everybody joining us today for what will be our very first author talk here in the new Emily Hundley Library. Those of you who were here a couple of weeks ago and saw our first art opening, this is just the beginning of some, we're continuing with some firsts which are just very exciting for us all, and we thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Elma Burdett. I'm in my 15th year as Director of Library Services, and I will invite Jim Stillman, who's a faculty member in our Community and Regional Studies program, to come and open us with a reflection.
If we could take a moment of silence, a moment of prayer, and I would like to offer some words, if I could borrow from Dr. Mansim's book, to help us understand the message that Dr. Okafor has brought us in his book, Elma, and help us to understand the motives and understand the experiences that he's captured in this moving narrative on women in the book that he describes. Bless us to the fulfillment of your message. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I now have the pleasure of introducing our guest artist today, Dr. Mansim Okafor. Dr. O, as he's known among his students, is a highly trained scientist with degrees in biology, zoology, and physiology, a college soccer captain. How many of you didn't know that? He earned his bachelor's and master's degrees in Nigeria and completed his PhD at Wayne State Medical School in Detroit. He arrived at St. Catharine in 2002. He's currently chair of the Natural Sciences Department, and he is a faculty member in Anatomy and Physiology. He's a member of the Kentuckiana African Fellowship, and he has served as both secretary and president of that group. Dr. O has been in the United States since 1990. He and his wife of 30 years have 3 children. Now, I've worked on the pronunciations here, so bear with me. Chuma is his son, a U of L fan, by the way. Ifatu and Chioma, who are both UK fans, the girls. His mother and younger sister, Ngozi, and his brothers Ernest and Humphrey, who are an attorney and a police officer, are all still residing in Nigeria. His oldest sister, Uzo, lives in London with her husband and children. His youngest sister, Obi, lives in Wisconsin with her husband and family. On the dedication page of Dr. O's book, you will find the names of his sisters, including Chinwe, who passed away in Nigeria, and his book is dedicated to his sisters. In publicity for this event, we have referred to Elma as Dr. O's first novel, and that turns out to be partly true. It's his first novel published as Edita Mesanovic, but he also has published Chinelo under the name Okafor Mansim, and we actually have this copy on our shelf, so that was an oversight on my part. I'd forgotten all about that. He also wrote Rainbows on Angel's Wings, which was a finalist in the 2001 Movies.com Open competition, and that became the basis for Elma. In writing Elma, Dr. O adopts the persona of a female Bosnian Muslim professor. The Muslim-Christian conflict that he writes about is parallel to his own familiarity with situations in his native Nigeria. And as Dr. O may share in his remarks, the theme of rape in the context of ethnic conflict is one that for him hits very close to home. Please join me in welcoming St. Catherine's own Dr. Mansim Okafor.
Thanks for coming. It's quite a pleasure to really have colleagues and friends and students get to honor somebody that barely could handle the language. It's only in America, really. It's only in America. And I say it very proudly because many of you here don't really know the beauty of your own country. It's only in America that somebody could say, I wrote a book. And his friends would say, and colleagues would say, yeah, we want to hear a little bit about it. And they say it's about something in Bosnia. And they say, tell us more. So I really feel honored to be here, and I speak from the bottom of my heart that I very much appreciate your presence here. The truth should be told that I'm not really an author. I have a lot of secrets in my life. One of it is that I'm not an author. I'm just a storyteller. I just tell stories. I even tell stories in my class. Some students would rather I teach them biology. But there's this I'm compelled always to tell stories because they make things easier on everybody. So that is the first denial I have to make. I'm not an author, I'm a storyteller. I have some other secret, really. One of them is that I'm not a woman. No, I'm not Edita Mesanovich. You can figure that one out yourself. Well, she exists. Edita Mesanovich exists. Actually, she exists in this book. Not only as the author, but as a character. I'm going to read you a section of it. This is on page 244 of the book. And to set up the story, this is somebody who wants to do good in a country in need of saints, in a world in need of saints. So she wants to do good, even though this good does not favor her people. But she wanted to do that good, and she goes, "Is this Mr. Johnson?" She asked. "My name is Edita Mesanovich. I am a Muslim lady from Bosnia, and I have come to serve as a character witness for Colonel Kajevich. He is a good man. I need to do this early enough just to prove that Edita Mesanovich does exist. She also exists in the dedication to my sister Uzo, to my sister Ngozi, to my sister Chinwe, and Obi. I happen to have been born in the middle of 3 girls. If you add my mother on top of it, I'll be in the middle of women. And I grew up to learn to defend them and protect them. It's sometimes not easy for a young man, but you've got to do it. My 3 sisters are each and every one of them Edita Mesanovich. This shouldn't be lost to anybody, because Edita Mesanovich is anybody, any woman who was injured by a man in a way she can never hate. And this book is dedicated to all of them. I tell you that there are many of them there. Many Edita Mesanoviches at the receiving end of things that shouldn't happen to any human being whatsoever. That sets the book then. The book is set in Bosnia, 1992 Europe, Central Europe, the end of the 20th century. In a civilized world, where certain things are not supposed to happen. No, certain things are not supposed to happen in a civilized world. And certain things are definitely not supposed to happen in 20th century Europe. The very center of civilization. Certain things are not supposed to happen there. Not to say that those things are supposed to happen anywhere, but not in Central Europe. And that is where this story is set. That is where Edita Mesanovich and the likes of her were wounded in a way many of them will never recover. They will never heal. I'm going to tell you their story, really. But their story is not as important as to what didn't happen. Because there are people there who are supposed to step in and say, this cannot happen, but they did not. They allowed the band to play on as if nothing happened. My fear is that if this continues, it's going to repeat itself. Unless people speak up and say, never. I'm going to tell you their story. I'm going to tell you two stories, by the way. I'm going to tell you another story that frequently strikes a little closer to home. Because many a time, when you hear certain stories, you think, it is them. It is them. And this is us. We are comfortable here. We're okay here. Maybe not. Maybe we should pay more attention. So let me tell you what happened in Boston. The book is set in a town called Focia, spelled F-O-C-A, but pronounced Focia. The town was overrun, and all the women and the men were captured. They were taken to a particular hall. In this hall, the men were separated from the women, and the men were just summarily executed. That's it. They were just executed. And you may feel bad for them until you hear what happened to the women. So every morning, these officers will come, anybody really, but mostly the officers will come and say, I want a woman. I want a woman. I want a woman. And they will take them. Of course, many of them didn't come back. Many of them were found floating in the river, the Drina River. This is their story. This we don't have. 20th century Europe. In a civilized world, it don't happen. Let me tell you another story. This story was actually carried by Newsweek of September 23, 1996. The title was Born Under a Bad Sign. That was the heading of the article. Born Under a Bad Sign. The village was under attack and everybody went to hide. One young lady went to hide in a corner that nobody remembered. So when the family ran, nobody remembered her. She was busy sleeping, but she was comfortable where she was hiding. The poor lady wakes up in the morning to discover there was nobody in the house. There was nobody around. A man from the other side figured out that she was there. And you can imagine what the man did to her. For 7 good months. Of course, she was pregnant. By the time she was rescued, she was pregnant. She was 7 months pregnant. And she couldn't perform an abortion. She had a baby that nobody wanted. That is the baby that was born under a bad sign. Because the mother didn't want her. The man that made her pregnant didn't want her. The mother didn't want him, and the man that made her pregnant didn't want him. And this lady said, and I'm going to read it. It says, there is not a punishment strong enough for what he has done to me. He has wounded me in a way I can never heal. This was actually the article I read, and I couldn't understand it. I have a mother and 3 sisters. Can you imagine what I would have felt like if one of my sisters said, this man did so and so things I cannot recover from it. In my culture, if you rape somebody in their family, you rape the family. So the family will not recover from it. What the family will do depends on the family. But imagine this woman. She can never date, she can never marry because nobody's going to bother with her, even on her own side. And I felt strongly that this shouldn't happen to anybody, let alone in 20th century Europe. Not in this time and age. And I was so consumed by it. I was doing research at UFL then. Got into my lab, I couldn't do a single thing. And someone said, what's the matter with you? And I said, did you read this? She said, well, what's the business here? What's my business here? Somebody has just been injured in a way she couldn't recover, and you say, what's my business here? Well, maybe I didn't have a business there. Maybe the band should play on, as if nothing happened. Or maybe not. Maybe not. Because I felt strongly that if something is not done about it, I need to continue. Tomorrow it could be my sister. I have 2 daughters. You don't want to know how many cousins I have. You don't want to know how many nieces I have. Well, I felt I should say something because in the end, like John Gardner wrote, we are fighting against entropy anyway. But we need to give entropy a fight. That's why we have government. Even if the system is going to collapse, it doesn't have to collapse today. It doesn't have to. We have to give it such a fight that in the end, people must say that, hey, there was a man in his time. He gave it a fight. He did his best. And for heaven's sake, that is exactly what we are supposed to give. Give our best. Give it a shot. So that was why I wrote. I wrote, actually, I wanted to write an article on it. And I wrote first 2 pages, I got tired. It wore me out. So I stopped writing. But I didn't find peace. So I went and wrote a little more. Got up to 5 pages. And got tired again. So I put it away for about a year. Then one day something said, what? And I started writing. I had 10 pages, 20 pages, 50 pages. The rest says history. Now, the stories I've told you so far have several components. We have the victims. Whether we like it or not, there will always be victims in our midst. It's sad to say, but it's true. And as long as we have victims, we must have those that victimize them. We must have predators. But there's a third group. There's a third group that didn't play their role here. And I'm going to illustrate that third group with another story altogether. This story I'm going to tell you happened in Ohio. Steubenville High School. 2 young men dragged a drunk lady in the presence of everybody and molested her. The young men are now crazy. The girl is inebriated. But what of the 50 or so young men and women who were there? What did they do? They did nothing. Not even one single voice in a civilized society to say, you can't do this. They wash their hands clean because they believe it is them. I'm going to read you another section of this book. Why it is not always right or proper for us to wash our hands of evil. I want to set it up for you. This a guy trying to help somebody from the other side of the conflict. And he couldn't do it himself. So he's trying to solicit the help of his sister, so that the sister could help him do it. And the sister was like, are you kidding me? Help the other side? No. Unfortunately for the sister, she happened to be a Christian. And the brother took upon, keyed on that and said, and I quote, "I am sorry for getting you involved in this. You know how hard I've worked to keep away from the mess at the camp. However, it is one thing to ignore the things that are not under one's direct control. It is quite another to take a person from the safety of one's home to a gruesome fate." And he goes, "You need to read Schindler's Ark." Schindler's Ark is the book from which the movie Schindler's List was made. Schindler's Ark, you need to go read it. It's a fascinating book. You also hold the Bible in your hand. From it you should learn that it is not good enough for people to wash their hands off evil, like Pontius Pilate. Rather, it should be in the nature of everyone who professes our faith to proactively do good. The conscience of those who do not intervene when the forces of darkness act up, we hold them hostage for as long as they live. I am challenged daily by an understanding that those of us who claim the faith should live a life of magnanimity that shines forth as a defining deed. Otherwise, like our neighbors, we will come off as frauds. If we don't do certain things we are supposed to do, we are not different from our neighbors, right? And that is why I wrote this book. That is why I wrote it. I believe that if every one of us should do what is expected of us, the two young men shouldn't have done what they did to that lady in November. The Bosnian massacre, the genocide that shouldn't have happened. And a lot of these things all over the world. So who shall we send? And who will bear the cat? Who is going to do this? I'm going to read you a completely different section of the book now. As to those who are going to do that. And this has to do with the same characters, the man and the sister. And the sister still could, she did all this, but she just, she's not fully engaged in the whole thing. And so the question is, what should we do? What should we engage in it? And the point he was trying to make is that if not us, who will do it? If not us, who's going to do it? And I'm going to quote it, say, number 3. My dear, we as true children of grace should refuse to inherit the venom of those who will never accept that the other side has its own sense too. This world is upside down because of this cancer. And this world will not heal itself. It will not be healed by politicians. It will not be healed by religious leaders, or tribal or ethnic leaders. It will be healed by those who thrive. It will not be healed by those who thrive in closed boxes from where they feed this very beast. No. Those who will heal this world are common people like you and I, who are willing to bear the cross, step out of our shadows, reach across the divide, and love across their borders. Only these shall heal the world. Only those who can step out of the box. Only us can heal this world. And I can hear many of you say, one man against an army. Well, yes. One man against an army. If you really want to know what one man against an army can do, I want you to remember Tiananmen Square in China. when the Communist Party rode on an army of tanks. And one man with 2 grocery bags stood up in front of an army of tanks, a group of tanks. And the tanks didn't move an inch. And that is why I wrote. I wrote for all those who are wounded by men that they couldn't hear. I wrote to raise the voice. I was talking about awareness to it. So that even though we cannot change the past, at least we can influence the future. That is why I wrote. Thank you. A question, should I say?
Me? Okay. Oh. You found the story that was set in Bosnia, and you set this story in Bosnia. There's conflict, there's been conflict in your own native country, much like it. Why did you choose to write about Bosnia rather than Nigeria?
A very good question. Several reasons. I'll give you just 2. Bosnia is more recent, and it's in Central Europe. 20th century. I'm actually getting into 21st century. Certain things are not supposed to happen there. Certainly, certain things. There are certain things you hear about, say, Africa. You're like, these crazy people. So many things are happening in Africa that nothing shocks anybody anymore in Africa. I hope you know. The band can play on there. And the band has always played on there. But it rises the world more when it happens in an unusual place. That's why I said it. In my own country during the Civil War, this type of thing was common. You don't want to get into that story. But it's all about the war, really. But Bosnia was a better place to set it. It was a Muslim-Christian conflict. It is a modern place. It was formerly communist, it's now capitalist. All those play into the whole story. That is why I decided to set it there. Besides, that was actually the one that struck me. That was the one that arrested me. And it is always difficult to leave the story of your heart, really, to go right about a convenient story. If you're not careful, it becomes too contrived to be relevant to whatever message you're trying to convey. This one was more relevant to me. She spoke to me. That is my own enemy. And I can't go from it. And to leave a story to tell another person's story will just be most unfair. That's why I left it in Bosnia. Any questions?
As you wrote the story, why do you think people are scared to stand and speak up to some things? What holds people back? I think, I like the spirit of, well, you started writing for the first few days and you stopped. Couldn't do it. Another few days, you're like, okay, I'm ready. And then you stopped. And then the next day you said, I'm going to do it. Why do people not have that spirit to say, we've got to keep fighting, we just can't do things?
Several. It's a very, very dense topic. Very dense topic. Even when you tell certain people, they don't want to hear it because to many people, they don't want to relieve their own trauma. To others, it's a matter of convenience. Okay? You know how much energy it took me to write this? To many people, it's more like, it wouldn't matter. Even if I write this article, who's going to read it? Okay? The world is so saturated with negative news that people don't really pay attention to a lot of things anymore. Virtually everything is acceptable. Too many things are acceptable in our society now that shouldn't be. But people are too tired of fighting one little, another one. Is it drug? Is it human trafficking? Is it, which one do we really want to fight? So I said, this one, let's just add it to the park and let the bomb play. After all, I'm happy here. I'm working at St. Catharine. My students are happy with me. My bosses are happy with me. I make my living, I pay my bills. Why worry about bosses? People don't really want to take up additional responsibility, especially one that is not likely to bring any immediate benefits, so to speak. It's a burden. You'll be stigmatized in some quarters. And please remember that the empire will fight back. The empire will fight back. So if you add all those together, people don't want to mess with it. And that is what emboldens the other side to continue doing what they are doing. Okay? I can assure you that whatever happened in Steubenville High School, those students there, that was not the first time they've seen such a thing. So when the system didn't do what it's supposed to do in the first place, why bother? You report it and all your friends in the school will call you a name. They will ostracize you. Young people like to move in the park. They want to belong. So society should virtually overcome its own reticence towards these things. The fear of being stigmatized as the person who's failed. Listen, you either die living or you die dead, or die fighting. And if you really want to be a man in a time, or a woman of a time, by the way, I keep saying man of a time. If you really want to express that element of humanity that we should really, as people who are civilized, you should speak up. Even if you are the unknown boys here, go along and speak up. Who knows, by the way? If you speak up, others could catch your own echo and echo your voice, and it becomes louder in the process. But if you are to start it loudly, if it falls apart, that's part of your cost again. But at least your conscience will tell you you did your best. And that's the most you can do, by the way. Do our best.
I wanted to ask a question based on something in the beginning of the book when Elma's arguing with her cousin. She says, "In fact, man's path is plastered with the blood of the innocents whose groans still echo in lands far and near. And of course, this is not in kids' history books." And I wondered what you thought of the fact that we tend to overlook, especially tragedies that occur that may be considered the fault of America, and how we just sort of skim over that when talking to children about these issues.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Thank you, John. History is the story of the victor and the story of the strong. I'll give you a completely different example. Apartheid in South Africa. If you read the history books in South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Namibia, when apartheid was there, you wouldn't believe it happened in this war. He didn't mention anything against the indigents. He shouldn't, because nobody likes to say, "I killed my neighbor." You can say that. Just human nature. Okay? So we must be very careful. And that's why I keep telling my students, even when you read a paper, a scientific paper, and it says, "Oh, you need to drink 10 gallons of water a day, you need to drink this amount of Gatorade a day. Or cigarette doesn't cause cancer." Remember? For years, even scientists didn't agree that cigarette cause cancer. Why? The research was published by them. They can say, "Oh, cigarette causes cancer." So, history as we know it is always tweaked to sound better than it is. If you get to Germany, they talk of Nazi Germany, not Germany, during the Second World War. In Japan, they say Imperial Japan, not Japan. Why Imperial Japan? Because they don't want to be associated with the stigma of what they did. Attacked a country that wasn't at war with them. The rape of Nanking in China. They did terrible things. If you ask me to write the history of Nigeria, I wouldn't say that my grandfather was a slave trader. You can't hear it from me. My neighbor can say it as much as he likes. But I won't buy his book. But I don't want to read that part of my own history. So that's why history is whittled down to what it is really. And that is why, on the average, we don't really appear to learn much from history. And part of the fact that history repeats itself can be attributed to that. Because people don't really get into it and have the totality of information as exactly what happened. So as to plan to avoid it in totality. So no, you can never get complete history unless you yourself could add the missing link, so to speak. Okay? Somebody tells you a story, yeah, he didn't tell me this. You add it. And that will give you a fuller story.
I wanted to ask, the name you chose, Edita Nasanovic, for your pseudonym,
That's my name.
did you just like the name, or does it have some meaning to you, some reason you chose that name?
The editor part of it has a meaning to me. Because it's my sister-in-law's name. And she was instrumental for me coming to the US. She went out of her way to do everything possible to get the money, get me the funds, did everything. So I believe I should honor her one way or the other. Number two, I was looking for an easy name, names that people can easily pronounce. The surnames are usually very difficult to pronounce. So I chose an easy name, Edita, that anyway, so at least you can pronounce an easy one and struggle with the other one. But it is a random name. I chose a random name. And when I chose the name, I did a Google search of all the names. Nobody bothered me. Guess what? A day after the book was published and I looked at it, I went back and there was this lady from Croatia. Her name was Edita Nasanovic. And she was a very popular person there because her page is 1 mile long. So it is somebody's name eventually. But by and large, it should be somebody's name. Somebody must be Edita. Nasanovic is a common name. So yeah, I chose it randomly, but it certainly belongs to somebody. No question?
Nancy, I have a question.
Oh boy.
Last Sunday afternoon, we had Joanne Weiss here, an artist, and she spoke a few minutes about having the courage to call herself an artist, while all along she had been because she was producing art.
Yeah.
So, from the writer's perspective, and I missed the first 10 minutes, you may have covered this, and if you did, I'm sorry to have missed. Would you have written the book even though you knew no one would read it? Were you passionate enough about the story that it had to be told?
Certainly.
Good.
Even if I'm the only one to read it, I'll be satisfied. In a way, it was a type of catharsis for me. I needed to put it on paper. And to be sincere with you, what you read today, you have here, is not actually close to what my original text was. It was terrible. But I liked it. I loved it to death. Because I told the story I wanted to tell. Then I went to a couple of workshops. Someone said, oh, you shouldn't say this like this. Why not? Oh, because that's not how I said it in America. Uh-oh. So I went and changed that. And that's the beauty of creative writing. That's the beauty of all these things. All you need to be is a storyteller, really. Because word processing makes it easy for you to correct anything. And my good friend here, the prof here, can always say, can I proof it for you? And many people in this college did. Dr. Leah did. You did a little bit of it. Ilona, Dr. Toto did. And 2 students, I have not mentioned their names. Taylor McNaught. She is not an English native. Moses, Aaron, right? What's his name? Moses Aaron? Dalton Aaron. Or Dalton Moses. Dalton Moses. Did if this book is half as good as you think it is, you should credit him, really. All the bad part of it is me. Okay? Dalton did a very wonderful job going through it. I said, we don't say that, yeah, we don't say. But if you're a writer, you should actually be ready to accept criticism. Don't be too married to certain words and certain things, especially when they may not fit into the narrative or when they may not fit into the story. But sure, even if my grandmother doesn't like it, I'll still like it.
Then you are a real writer. That was the point of the question also with Ms. Wise. If you're producing, then you are what you say you are.
Okay.
You had to write the story.
I feel flattered. I really feel flattered. I thought I was a storyteller. Now I'm told I'm a writer. Yeah. I'm a storyteller. Thanks, I'm a writer now. Maybe I'll get there sometime.
Dr. O, can you talk a little bit about the research that you did to produce this? There's clearly a lot of work that you put into learning about the history and the culture and religion and the social mores. And I'm wondering too if there was any time when you had interviews or discussions with people who'd been through experiences that you described here.
Thank you very much. We thank God for the internet, by the way. You can be where you will never be, but learn the place so much that people will think you went there. So I did a lot of internet search, went through the files, United Nations files, especially their trials, and all the trials, the ones that stick out, where it happened, when it happened, to who, how, and things like that. The details are there. Thousands of them, by the way. Then there's some element of serendipity in some of these things. I hope you know. There's an element of luck in it. Because all of a sudden I take my old car to a mechanic. Somebody said, this is the best mechanic in town. Does it fix old cars? Yeah. I took my car to him. And I looked at his name. His name was Miso. Esad. And I said, this guy is from that area. So I started talking to him. I said, Miso, how are you? He said, yeah. I said, so where are you from? He said, from Bosnia. I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, do you know Forsha? He said, yeah. Forsha is my town. I said, really, your town? Have you been there? I said, no, I've not been there. So how did you know Forsha? You know how somebody who comes from a particular town will believe that certain people don't know about the town? And I said, but I know about this river and this river. And what of this mosque? Have they reviewed it? When I mentioned the mosque in his town, he freaked out. He said, you know the larger mosque? I said, yeah. He said, oh, they've not fixed it. I said, when did you go back? He said he went back a year before, but the place is no more home. Well, they were kicked out of it. But United Nations intervention, they can go back now, but things are not the same anymore, so many of them don't want to go back. So, and I talked to him and his colleague there a lot. They didn't know I was writing a book. Actually, when I gave him a copy of the book, and I autographed it, I didn't tell him I wrote it. He's still reading it. And he said, this was written by, and he keeps insisting that the person must be a lady from his town. And, you know, it sort of made it for me in a way, because it meant that I convinced him a lot, enough to accept the story. So I didn't want to ruin it for him, even till today I've not told him. So I think very soon, you know, why didn't you didn't tell me this because they are very emotional about things like this. So yeah, I did that type of research too. And the workshops were very helpful. Okay? If you read the book, before I go there, there's one other thing that was very helpful to me. I hope you know that certain things, certain paradigms can be shifted from one scene to another. Christian-Muslim relationship is not peculiar to the Bosnians. Before the Civil War in my country, basically based on it. So most of the things that apply to Bosnia, Croatia, Herzegovina, and those areas apply to my Muslim-Christian conflict in my country. So it was easy to make that transition. I understand very well how they feel. One of my actually two of my best friends are Muslims. They're Muslims. And if you stay with them long enough, you start to have a feel of how they think, how certain things are very important to them, why many other things are not. One of them, Mohammed Potisco, came to my house one day with 2 giant bags of money. I said, keep this money for me. I mean, giant bags. If you count the money there, it will not be less than £500,000 or whatever. So I said, how much is it? He said, I don't know. I said, how are you giving somebody bags of money that you don't know how much? How do you know that it's complete when you get it? He said, you think, no, keep it. I trust you. And he called me and said, he dipped his hand into the one of the bag, took some money and put it into his pocket. He didn't count it. But there's some element of it that is also bothersome. The tendency not to forgive things. It's a bit bothersome. So I learned all those things from them. So it's easy to transpose it into the book. But I could easily, I confirm most of them from my good friend, Mr. Okay, Mr. In that sense, I picked up most of my information, 3-dimensional, anywhere I could get it. Okay. I even wrote the embassy. Funny enough, the embassy didn't write me back. There you go. So, but yeah, I got information for some. And I said this for the benefit of the students, really. Part of what you learn in college is biology and physics and chemistry. I hope I'm not missing English and things like that. But one other thing you must learn is the power of extrapolation. You take this thing, you said, okay, this thing, you can project exactly what is likely to happen down the road. So you don't really need to know everything. And it's very useful also when you go to jury duty and they're telling you all manner of something. You should be able to say, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense. And in that sense, my college education was very helpful. And that's the beauty of small colleges, liberal art colleges like this, where you learn science and art and everything put together. Because it sort of gives you a 3-dimensional understanding of humanity as you know it. Science is too 1-dimensional. Art is too 1-dimensional. If you bring them together, you have a synthesis that is the totality of man as you know it, that can count his pennies, but also have empathy towards his neighbor. That is why this college is ideal for what I really did. Thank you.
Well, let me encourage, if anyone has more questions, to take them inside. We'll have a time of a little bit of refreshment. There's some books for sale at the low price, cheaper than you can get on Amazon, and free shipping of $12. And Dr. O will be there. He'll sign your books for you if you want to buy those, and have a little bit of soft drink and cookies. But thank you all so much for coming and joining us today. And thank you, Dr. O, for your help.